Switching over now. 3, 2, 1.
All right, we are running and gunning. Can you hear me now? All right. We are getting going. We've been working in the shop all day. We're covered up with custom aero builds, but now we're up for discussion. So we're taking off hats and changing gears. We've got Zack Oxford.
Yes, sir.
Just like the college. It's how he told me to remember. And we are going to talk about something that I may know more about than I think. You know, I grew up on the farm, and my dad was a gardener / can everything, butcher our own stuff. So I may know more about homesteading. If you haven't gathered, that's what we're going to be discussing on Up for Discussion this evening.
Yep.
We also have Josh
the man Eblin.
Yeah.
Buckwheat Eblin.
Yeah. Big Daddy B.
James is running the controls.
That's right.
James Hutchcraft. He just flashed the Illuminati sign. I don't know what that's all about. But
He lets us know when things are working. When they're not.
Right. Just
Hey,
joking.
I'm just glad that we're seeing we've got some audio tonight. So
Good.
Everything's-
Last few times,
everything's working.
Yeah, last few
right.
times, James dropped the ball behind the scene.
Oh, man.
it's a wing and a prayer right here.
But we are up
and
and going. Everybody, like, comment, share, help us out.
subscribe.
Subscribe. Also, make sure you comment, because comment while you're watching live, even if it's just hello. And then as we get talking, you know, you can say, I don't understand that. Can you explain that? Those sort of things. So,
Sorry about that.
yeah. But anyhow, yeah, comment. And we're watching. James is watching. Everybody's watching. The
James,
Lord
make
is
sure you
watching.
let us know if we have any questions or anything like that. So
If
we're
we
pretty
miss 'em.
excited.
Yeah,
So-
me too.
Yeah.
So here we go.
Zach, we're glad to have you guys on.
Thanks for having me.
So Oxford Acres.
Yes, sir.
If someone's looking for Oxford Acres, are you guys on Facebook?
We're on Facebook. We are on Instagram. We do have a website that's kind of in the works still. But
Okay.
the website is live, oxfordacres.org. You can find us on Facebook, Oxford Acres. We just recently started a YouTube channel. So we are on YouTube now. I'm not going to say it's the greatest YouTube channel, but we're trying to put out some good content.
All
We
of
want
this
it to
is
be-
about development. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah. More than anything, I want our YouTube channel just to be educational.
Yeah.
Sure.
So never ending work in progress.
Yeah.
So
Mark Phillips is tuning in. He says, you know what I'm going to say.
it's going to have something to do with what's on top of my head, I'm sure. One day he'll learn.
He
How
gives Lathan a problem every time about
Yeah.
his hat. So, but speaking of hats, I like your hat, man.
Well, thank you.
Oxford Acres.
We've got just a few of these roaming around,
Yeah.
trying to get a feel. We've had some people reach out and say that they like them. So probably this summer sometime we'll end up
Yeah, that's cool.
making a number of them and selling some of these.
Awesome.
merchandise.
Yeah, we did beanies over the winter and they sold like hotcakes.
Beanies.
Yeah.
Josh is a beanie guy.
Oh, yeah. They look
Yeah.
nice. Those
Yeah.
are
I
nice.
took you up.
All right. So we're going to get started here this evening. Some of the questions that I've got for you would be definitely pertaining to the livestock end of it. And,
Yeah.
I'm sure you do farming as well. Do you guys do canning and stuff like that?
We
Like-
do.
okay.
We do some canning. We do some freeze drying. We ventured into freeze drying last year. We went out and bought one of the large Harvest Right freeze dryers.
Yeah.
And that thing's a beast.
Huh.
I mean, it'll pump out. We put 120 eggs in there the other day. Freeze dried all those at one time. I mean, you can do a
How-
lot with a freeze dryer.
How's that work? A
So-
freeze dried egg.
Now hold
Yeah,
hold
yeah.
on. Put a pin in the freeze dried, because I'm thinking about. I try to look at this or listen to things from a standpoint of someone sitting out there. Because if you asked me what a homesteading, what's your definition, and it can just be general, but your definition of homesteading, and then we're going to come right back to the freeze dried eggs, because I'm curious about the freeze dried.
Yeah, we do a lot of freeze drying. So homesteading. So for me,
Would you classify yourself as a homesteader?
I would. Yeah,
Okay.
I think we are, and I think that kind of the definition of a homesteader is changing. So I've listened to a lot. So my inspiration was like your Joel Salatin. I think when people think homesteading, they automatically think Joel Salatin. If everyone's possibly familiar with him, Justin Rhodes, like those types of people. They have brought up some really good points in the past, a year, maybe 2 years, since I've kind of been listening to them, where I think for a long time people thought about homesteading as this, self-sufficiency, self-reliance. It was all me do it myself. And they have brought some really good points up that the direction that is going, that's not the case. You can look at, we won't make it political, but just what's going on in the world in general. And if, the zombies attack, let's say, if the zombies attack overnight, the apocalypse happens.
Oh, it's going to happen.
I
better look out.
It's, we've got, just shy of 40 acres. And, I can't take care of 40 acres by myself if, the zombies are closing in on us. It takes a community. And so it takes, building relationships with your neighbors, the people that are close around you. Because if, you get an EMP strike, tomorrow afternoon and everything shuts down, your next door neighbor is going to become your best friend.
Yeah,
it's not even necessarily your family. Like, family's great, but if your family lives 2 hours away or even 30 minutes away, when it comes to walking, you're not going to walk that far on a daily basis. It's going to be those people right there next to you. So when I think of homesteading, it is us building. I like the idea of building a community around us. Because we can't do it ourselves. Homesteading to me is, and maybe in a sense, some self-sufficiency, doing things yourself, raising your own food, growing your own food, being able to, procure water, whether that's, rain collection, whether that's a sand point well, whether that's, digging a pond. We don't have a pond, but, digging a pond, being able to take that water and then make it usable, that kind of stuff.
So let me ask you this, for the person that's listening that heard what you just said and thinks, well, I bet Zach has got some tinfoil hats back at his house. What would your argument be for those people?
At least on his windows.
So, yeah. I'm not to the point of tinfoil hats, but I heard a guy, I don't know what his name was. It was one of those, I think, like reels on Instagram or something, where the guy was making the comment, like, we're at the point in history where, it's easier to believe the conspiracy theories than to believe that none of them are true. So there's so many out there. A lot of them, I think that there's a lot of some shady stuff going on in the world.
Would you say that that's what's driven you to become a homesteader?
Yeah. So our journey, so where we kind of got our start was around the time of COVID. Around that time, we just began to question everything. We began to see what was going on. We thought, this is absolutely crazy what they're doing to us. We began to, my wife, I'll back up real quick. So my wife is a nurse by trade. She was a nurse. I think she's watching the live stream right now, and I'm going to say she's been a nurse for almost 10 years, and she's probably going to tell me I'm wrong whenever I get home later. But almost a decade working as a nurse. And we began to, like, just with the vaccines, we began to question vaccines. I'm of the personality that if you go and you tell me, hey, you're going to do this, regardless of what it is, like, my personality many times is like, you're not going to tell me what to do. And so when we started getting these mandates and everything, when we started getting these mandates, we were like, there's something fishy with this. And so then that led us to questioning, what vaccines are our kids getting? Sure. And we're not going to make this a vaccine talk, but we started questioning those things. That led us into, especially my wife. She's amazing. And it led her into this, really looking at what's going into our food. And we begin to question, when it comes to, commercial farming, the amount of glyphosate that's in our modern food, what's going on with all these dyes, that they're pumping into our food. Why, whenever we look at, a box of macaroni and cheese that's on the shelf at Walmart, why is the label on this one so much different than what's over in Europe? Like, in Europe, there's so many chemicals they don't allow in your food.
Right. But
you look at it here and, you read a box of macaroni and cheese and, there's 12 different ingredients on it that appears to be something from a chemistry book. And you're like, what? Yeah. What am I eating?
Well, just even the process, like wheat.
Yeah.
They strip all the nutrients nutritional value out of it and then add to it.
Yeah.
You know,
Why are we taking from it to add something synthetic
Yeah,
back in?
absolutely.
When did gluten turn into the
Everything.
a life destroying
devil's pitchfork.
substance? You know?
Man, people been
Absolutely.
eating wheat from the
Something
beginning,
changed,
you know?
didn't
Yeah,
it? And
yeah.
when did peanut butter become toxic and
Yeah,
all that
yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
Peanut butter's
So,
delicious, especially
yeah.
you put jelly on there.
Yeah. It is. I love me a good PB and
It's good
J.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh,
On some
man.
flour enriched whatever bread. Stripped
So
all.
that's just to bind it all together. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. The glue.
So basically, homesteading is taking care of yourself,
It is. It
watching
is.
out
Yeah.
for yourself,
Yeah.
growing your food.
Well, there
butchering
was
your
a
own food.
time. What president was it that his motto was that every house was going to have a chicken?
Was that Reagan? I feel like I
Can't
see that
remember.
quote on
I
Instagram.
think it was further
You
back.
could probably
but,
wear that.
I mean, how
Well, it's-
awesome would it be if every home had a chicken at this point?
Yeah.
Because I raise chickens,
Mhm.
and when I say raise, I mean to a small degree. But that chicken math thing is legit.
It is.
Like, so I love the aspect of putting them in an incubator, watching them hatch, and then I just give them to everybody I know. But I mean, I'm trying to run around 30 to 40 chickens all the time.
Yeah.
And it provides us with enough food that honestly, if things went bad for a little bit, we got stuff, you know?
Yeah.
If you had to eat eggs every meal,
Yeah.
you probably could with 40 chickens
Yeah,
running
I
around.
mean,
Yeah.
How many chickens do you eat though? See, this is where I'm at, the camp I'm in. I'm that guy where you're like, hey, 40 chickens for sale. And I'm like, yeah, I want them all. And they're like, what are you going to do with them? I'm like, I'm going to eat them all.
Yeah.
They're like, you can't have them.
Well, you need to talk to Zach because Zach might sell you 40.
Well, the renewable part of the chicken is the egg.
Yeah.
yeah.
And when the chicken gets old, if you can keep critters and varmints from
Oh,
getting them,
yeah.
because everything loves chicken,
They want them.
then you eat them, right?
I'm all about it. I love some chicken.
Or you
Absolutely.
just hatch out a batch just to eat.
Yeah.
Well, Zach is doing both.
We are.
You're
Yeah.
doing meat birds
Mhm.
and you're doing
Yeah.
egg birds.
Because I
basically.
used to butcher, my dad, man, we butchered like 200 a year,
Yeah.
100
Yeah, that's some
chickens a
work.
year. And it was like a big family thing.
Mhm.
And I didn't look forward to it at all because I was a kid and I was like, all Saturday I'm cutting the feet off a chicken, but now it's a pleasant memory, and it has caused me where I can't hardly eat chicken from the store.
Mhm.
Now I
That
can
was-
eat chicken breast, like you get chicken breast with no bone, but like a bone-in piece of chicken. Because I grew up eating it off the farm, I'm like, that is not very good.
No dark
Yeah.
meat. No dark
Yeah.
meat for Lathan.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm 100% dark
Just
meat
not on the
if
bone.
that chicken comes off the farm and he's cleaned right, because if he's bled right and he's on ice quick, the bone,
Oh, yeah.
when you pull the meat off the bone, it's
Oh, yeah.
white and
Oh, yeah.
clean looking. And you pull this meat off this bone uptown up here and you're going to be like, what is that? It's all dark and black.
That's all I've ever eaten, man.
I
It's
know.
just the old.
The old
It's
gas
like
station
the old
fried
dark
chicken
leg.
leg.
You tear off that drumstick and you can't even chew it because it runs from one side to the
Oh,
other
yeah.
because it's slick.
Oh,
I'm
I've
telling you,
had
that
that.
farm, if you and you clean them right, you'll be like, that stuff is trash.
Yeah.
That's
And that's
interesting.
chickens was kind of our chicken math is real. I'll go back to that. So chicken math's real. So we lived in Mount Vernon, Indiana. This would have been 2.5, 3 years ago. Chickens were the first animal that we began to raise. So Joel Salatin wrote a book called Pasture Poultry for Profit. Read that book, and he talks about raising like 5,000 chickens a year or something like that, and how much money you can make off of it. And I wasn't necessarily looking at it from the money standpoint.
That's a
But-
truckload of chicken.
That's tons of chicken, tons.
Literally.
So
Tons.
literally
Literally,
tons.
Tons.
So-
in pounds.
What he really did a good job at, though, was he explains this book in a way where you take the person that wants to raise 20,000 chickens a year, and then it's scalable. So you can
Sure.
take it and you can bump it down to, if you want to raise 100 birds or 20 birds, however few you want to do, you can do that. So we lived in town in Mount Vernon. There we lived on, like 9,000 square foot of property. Like, I mean, it was tiny little lot. In town, it's against the law
Zone.
to
Yeah.
it's against the law to raise chickens in town.
Really? Because a
yeah.
lot of towns.
Tell me I can't.
Yeah,
A lot of
city
towns in the
ordinance.
ordinance though that will allow chickens though.
They will. So a lot of places it's kind of like you can raise this many chickens in your backyard, but there's stipulations. So like no roosters. If they're too loud, then you have to do so. And there's like how many you can do.
The 4 o'clock in the morning wake up calls. Yeah.
So Mount Vernon was no chickens. Their city ordinance was no chickens at all. So it's not
which Mount Vernon?
Mount Vernon, Indiana.
The communist one.
I've actually heard that before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I do a lot of
Because
business.
I think Wayne City, of course, is not a city. It's a lot more
village.
More like Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon's probably bigger, I guess. But Wayne City, I think we can have chickens. We can have horses in town.
No kidding.
Yeah, but
horses.
you can't have anything with a split hoof.
Interesting.
Which
we'll talk pigs here in a minute.
Which rules out your pigs, cows, and goats and stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk pigs in a minute.
How do the sheep get by over there?
That's not city limits.
Really?
That backyard is not in city limits, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Well, good for them.
So they come into city limits when they're not in their pen.
They frequent.
The sheep do not pay attention to the city limits.
No, they don't care.
Yeah.
So how many chickens a year do you feel like leave or are raised on Oxford farms?
So
Oxford acres, I apologize.
Yeah, no, you're fine. So we run a flock of about 30 to 40 hens as well. So that's our layers. We have those consistently year round.
Yeah.
Last year, meat bird wise, we raised almost 400 meat birds.
Wow.
So we raised about 400, butchered all of those on farm. And we'll probably do just as many this year, if not more than that.
Are you selling those?
So you cannot sell in the state of Illinois. You cannot sell. Well, you can. So there's some caveats. So if you have a butcher license, then you can sell that. But you can only sell from your farm. So I don't have a license. So many times what happens is family members, the way that I do this is just with friends and family. Essentially, they say, "Hey, I want 30 birds. I want 20 birds, whatever it might be," and they purchase those birds beforehand, and then I raise them for that individual, and then they come and they help me butcher. So they're butchering their own birds, and they may end up only doing 2 or 3, but they're helping me.
And they might be like, "Well, you've got all this equipment. I'm renting your equipment."
Yeah, little trade barter system.
Because we've got the equipment, we've got the setup, we've got the stainless steel tables, we've got a plucker.
So you can't sell them, but can't you? You can sell eggs legally, can't you?
Correct.
But
you can sell what's in the egg, but you can't sell what comes out of the egg.
Well, here's a question.
That's what I was like.
Which came first?
Commies.
I think the chicken came first.
I would think so too.
I would think so too.
I believe in a creator that probably made the chicken first.
I think so too.
Absolutely.
Designed the chicken to make the egg.
Yes.
Jay Wallace says, "Zach, you're spot on. Be ready, folks."
Appreciate it, Jay.
People get ready.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of people that, I will say this, and without getting into conspiracy theories or any of that stuff, whenever COVID happened, there was a large contingent of people who looked at what was happening around us and was like, "I'm not really comfortable with this."
It was a wake-up call.
It really was.
Yeah.
And
It's a trial run.
And that doesn't that you don't have to get political about it, because it was a little bit on both sides of the aisle on that aspect of it.
Well, it just was what it was.
It was.
And I still cannot figure out how to grow toilet paper. That's the big thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. When you said the aisle, that's the reality. There was nothing in the aisle.
Yeah.
I mean,
And here's the thing: when nothing's in the aisle, Zach,
what do you do?
Well,
you become
you better
my friend.
hope that
I have
someone with
something you need.
knowledge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what all this is about. It's about having knowledge and procuring knowledge.
Have you ever watched that thing that I seen it a while back? It popped up on my feed somewhere, and I got sucked in and watched. It's like a little reel or video or whatever, but it was on the Depression, and they said one of the big things that saved people's lives in the Depression was lard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they said lard saved people's lives in the Depression.
We can talk lard if you want to.
We'll talk
got a
some
lot.
lard. We never have made it back to the freeze-dried
Well, I
eggs.
And you were talking about skill, man, and this is like, I have a little homestead going too.
He's got some skills.
I got some skills. I got
Yeah.
some skills. You
I got
know,
some skills
I
to
got
pay the
some, you know,
bills.
peaches, pears, plums.
Yeah.
I got a
Yeah,
little
I'll
bit of
trade
everything,
you.
man.
I'll
I
trade
got a bunch of tomatoes in the window right now. I
Yeah.
got some sand.
Same.
I have some sandstone wells. They're live wells, man. Living water springs forth
Oh,
out of
yeah.
the ground.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It really
Yeah.
is cool, man.
Yeah.
But what I think of my shout out to my grandpa Shavy, late and great grandpa Shavy Hedge. And I remember growing up across the street, and he had these just massive gardens, and they were beautiful. And he would, he was older, he was retired, but he wanted for nothing. He had all this skill. And this is what I'm trying to impress upon my children as I see people in society getting away from this. It's like, it's like, I'm not 100% sustainable at my house. Do I want to be? Probably not, because there's some convenience there, a little louder there, swing that needle a little bit there. But what I'm getting at is like, it's this skill, and you're passing this on from generation to generation, because this type of lifestyle is being eroded.
It is.
And I find it's a big deal.
I would agree with the fact that there is a bunch of the last generation, that does not have a clue, do they?
Well,
see,
so-
my generation, maybe not even all of mine, but I grew up. I mean, I grew up in all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I watched my grandpa, but now, like, we're getting close to being of the grandpa age. I mean, we've got kids. I've got kids. I've got kids that, I mean, anytime I could be a grandpa. None of them.
Yeah.
I'm right
None
there
of them,
too.
you know what I mean? I got 23-year-olds. So those kids, if we don't watch it, my generation is not doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it's a kind of a lost art, I guess you could say. But
Well, I think what had happened was, so I think to my grandparents, and they always had, wonderful gardens, and not that my parents didn't, but I think what happened was you had grandparents who, that was just a way of life.
Yeah.
That's what they lived. Bread did not last, go bad within 3 or 4 days.
3 days.
Like that's how,
stuff.
that's how bread should be.
Yeah.
So there was that generation that's what they knew. That's how they grew things. That's how they lived.
Milk and
And then
cows.
Yeah. Oh, I could go down a route. We drink raw milk.
Man,
We're raw milk
and it
people.
lasts.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So make some yogurt. Yeah. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Every time I drink raw milk, it's every once in a while you got that.
you just didn't filter it right. So you had that generation, like my grandparents, that's the way that they lived.
Yeah.
And then my parents' generation, and this is not slamming them in any way, but canned goods came along.
Sure.
And
Preservatives.
it was cheaper. It was more affordable to go buy a can of green beans from the store for 10, 15 cents.
Way
And so-
easier.
Yeah, and there was no research on any of this stuff that they were putting in. And I would guess that their original canned green beans didn't have what the green beans,
sure.
what canned greens
Yeah.
have in them now.
Sure.
So they went from growing everything to, it was more convenient
Mhm.
to not do that.
Well, we live
and
in a
then-
microwave popcorn age.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
want it. We want it.
Want it now.
And so
want it
then my
fast.
generation, so I'm my parents' kid, and we were never taught a lot of these. Now, thankfully, I was like, I had grandparents that did teach me. My parents did do a small garden. My parents have put some things on our farm when it comes to establishing. We have 30 blueberry bushes that they planted. Like we get 50 gallons worth of blueberries a year right now.
Oh,
we
that's
get
awesome.
we get
That's
so many like thornless blackberries. My parents did a ton. Like I'm not saying they didn't
They
do
set
anything.
you up. Yeah.
They did. They set me and my sister up for success.
Mhm.
So, but a lot of parents didn't do that because they
Yeah.
just didn't know. And so now my generation's sitting around twiddling their thumbs like, there's no toilet paper, there's no food. What do we do? Because they've lived. They don't. There's so many people that don't know that like a hen is going to lay an egg regardless of if there's a rooster.
Yeah.
They think you have to have a rooster
Right.
Yeah.
to have eggs.
Yeah.
And you don't. So they just don't know.
That's interesting. So I agree with that. And I also saw the other day that there's been a resurgence. Like you were talking about how kids these days don't, but there's been a resurgence of interest in
Mhm.
that
Oh yeah.
in the last several years. And I think so. I look at today's youth, and there's a really weird paradox that's happening because you've got kids that they don't know how to work. They're on their phones all the time. They don't want to. And then you've got the other extreme that are fascinated with
Yeah.
homesteading. They're
Yeah.
fascinated with these things.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's creating these strange, weird dynamics that I think what's 20 years from now going to look like? Are you
Those
don't
that
know.
can do are going to have all the wealth, and those who don't won't.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have to pay someone to change a light bulb, man.
Mhm.
I mean, it could get to that point, you
Yeah.
know. I mean,
Oh no, we got LEDs now. They last forever.
well, but when they go out, you're going to have,
Yeah.
you know, they're going to have to call somebody.
So many of the youth, they live in this, it's the virtual world.
Oh man,
Yeah.
And that's truly what it is. I mean, I'm a police officer in Evansville, and we see that all the time. Of these kids are just, they are zoned in, and that impacts that. I think that contributes to your mental health. That contributes to your physical health. I think that physical health is a huge
sure.
factor in your mental health.
It does, but what does it say about the fact that how we're trying to educate people, and I'm speaking from us as well, is we're trying to educate people with social media
Sure.
and with podcasts.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to reach out almost to a younger age with
Well,
what they do.
Yeah. But also through that, hopefully you stimulate the one that knows,
Mm-hmm.
because the only way to really learn that stuff is get your hands in the
Yeah.
dirt.
Absolutely.
Get your hands in the dirt. And my dad, like I started growing gardens, and I haven't for the last several years. My life's just been a different direction and busy, right? And but I spent several years growing gardens, and
Yeah, your gardens were stellar.
and you know, I would I would be like, these, whatever it was, zucchinis or cucumbers or tomatoes, whatever it was, I'd call Dad, and I'd be like, these things aren't growing to save themselves.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, well, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
And he'd, well, I'll come by there and look at them. He could look at them and tell
Yes.
what they needed, or he's like, you put them on the wrong end. You should-
Yes. Yes.
If you'll come down
Yeah.
here and fill this soil on this end, now this is your tomato soil
Yeah.
down here, and this
Mhm.
is your cucumber soil down on this end of it. And he said, and I had chickens right back there. He says, here's what we'll do. Because they were tomato plants, I think it was kind of picky. He said, now you can get that stuff. You got to get the stuff out of the bottom, not the fresh that
Yeah.
comes out of the backside of the chicken, you know. And that stuff that was broke down, he said, don't put it right next to it. Put it out there about 6 inches around and hoe it in around that tomato plant.
Let that leach in there. And
Yeah.
turn her
He
good
said
and
nitrogen,
green.
and all of a sudden, within 2 weeks, I had
Yeah.
green, tomatoes that, you know, I could walk out there, and you know how a healthy tomato plant feels cold.
Oh yeah.
You always say if he's real healthy, you feel him and he feels cold.
All those
Really?
little hairs are
Yeah.
all standing out.
I
At
didn't
the
know
edge.
that.
Yeah,
They've
it
got
feels like-
super deep roots, and they're pulling up that
Yeah,
nice
they
cold
feel
moisture from the
cool.
ground.
If
Yeah.
he don't
Huh.
feel cold, he ain't feeling good.
Huh.
He's gonna die probably if you don't do something.
I'll tell you
for
another
him.
one with tomatoes is a ton. Well, here we go, man.
I've seen the pictures of this guy's
dude, I'm
tomatoes.
telling you, man. Listen, I got these bodacious. All right, doesn't that sound? I'm telling you, man, dude, they're so big and they're oh, it's awesome. I'm gonna hook you guys up. But
Yeah.
they say throw a Tums in with them, and that
Tum, yeah, 'cause of
Tums.
the calcium.
The calcium,
Yeah,
blossom
yeah, I've heard
rot
that.
is
Yeah.
a big deal with tomatoes, especially if you don't, you know,
Yeah.
move them around enough.
I've heard
Yeah.
you can do eggs. Like if you'll toss
Yep.
an egg because of the eggshell, you'll toss an egg underneath
I've
your
heard
tomato
eggshells.
plants.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard bone meal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah.
Get
Yeah,
bone
it's all
meal
that calcium.
Any good
and put
source
it
of
in the
calcium
bottom
Yeah.
is good.
when you plant it, like scatter it in the
Mhm.
bottom of the hole.
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
So if one was to go into your pantry right now, what would that look like?
We have many 5-gallon buckets that are filled with, you know, whole foods. So we have a 5-gallon bucket of bread flour. We have a 5-gallon bucket of all-purpose flour. And now I'll say we have one of rice. We have one of beans. We have one of sugar, like a real sugar. And we've probably got some more that I'm missing. But in like our top shelf of our pantry, I'm just picturing it right now. Like we have like 50-pound bags of macaroni noodles. So like we buy everything in bulk, and we buy it from this. So there's a company. They're online, so it's kind of like almost like a food co-op. It's called Azure Standard, and so it's AZURE Standard. So I forget what the founder's name is, but he essentially has his vendors. It's kind of like Amazon for food. So the vendors that sell through this website, they have to sign legal documentation stating that we don't put certain things in our food. Now, in some ways, they're a little more expensive. In other ways, they're not nearly as expensive. You kind of have to sort through and buy the right things from them. But a lot of the dried goods, we get those and we get it once a month. It ships to a truck. The semi comes and drops it off at a predetermined location, and we pick up from there.
Yeah.
So like flour, so like there's no glyphosate that's ever been sprayed on any of these. There's no pesticides, no insecticides, no fungicides. So it's true flour, like the way that it's supposed to be. So we buy a lot of our grains, almost entirely all of our grains from this company.
When you say glyphosate, people need to understand what that is. It's
Roundup.
Roundup.
Roundup. Yeah. So a lot of our pantry is those kind. It's whole foods with cocoa powder. Like if we want to have chocolate milk, like shoot, we get some sugar out, some real organic cane sugar. We put it in some milk and we mix some cocoa powder in there with it. We've made homemade chocolate syrup from this stuff. I mean, and it's not this, like, I'm not opposed. I love sweets.
Oh,
like
man.
we'll make dessert. We'll make little mug cakes they're killer, but we use real foods. We use a real butter. We use real milk, like raw milk. Our coffee in the morning, we got that fresh cream that we're putting in there. So
Bet that is good.
oh, it's good stuff, man. Absolutely.
Can we all come over tonight?
The thing,
So do you what about cheese? Do you do your own cheese?
So we've not ventured into cheese making yet. So we do buy that from Azure Standard, and they've got so many different kinds. But we'll buy a 6-pound block of cheese, and we'll buy 2 or 3 of those. Like, and the thing is like I think back to like my college days, and I ate so much processed food in college, so many like fake foods, I would just say, and I had to watch it when it came to eating too much of these, and you start gaining weight. Like since we've started eating a lot of these real foods, like I can eat so much food and not really gain weight. Now, I obviously calories in, calories out. There is there's math to that. There's a science to it. But when your food is able to be broken down and your body's like, hey, this is food right here.
Well,
go
food is
ahead.
fuel.
It is absolutely.
It is fuel. It's to fuel your body.
Yes.
And it's like if you're actually getting good stuff,
it just makes you wonder with all that other stuff in it. You're like, dude, it is, when you say it like that, when your body looks at it and says, oh, this is food, I know how to handle this. But with all the other things in the preservative world and all that, your body's like, I don't know what to do with this.
Absolutely.
Sets in your gut, gives
and
belly aches.
And I'll say, I don't want people to think that we're like, we never go out to eat or anything like we got pizza tonight. Like we went to the gas station, we got some pizza. Like there's nights where we got 4 kiddos. So like life happens, like we go out to eat, and if someone feeds my kid this or feeds my kid that, I will try my best to limit some of that. Yeah. But we, for the most part, we do eat really healthy, but we do have, you're not gonna find 100% clean cupboard in our house. Like, oh, there's chemical. It probably is.
Well, that probably reflects like the 30 years ago thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because we did that too when I was growing up.
Oh yeah,
sure.
But we didn't do it near as much.
Yeah.
You didn't go to town.
We got green beans out of the pantry that were canned. My dad canned, I don't know how many quarts, and then tomatoes, and we'd have all that stuff, and another chicken out of the freezer. And then Sunday after church or Saturday night or something, if we were out somewhere, we'd get pizza or something.
Yeah.
So it was like pizza or something like that potentially once a week.
Yeah.
And then we ate that way the rest of the week.
Yeah, I remember a lot of mashed potatoes and green beans.
Absolutely.
Wild game, a rabbit, man.
Yeah.
Picking shot out of rabbit and squirrel. That was
you had a separate saucer to spit your shot into.
And that's part of the reason why I had you on, because I feel like this is such a circular thing in regards to so many in the hunting community, because a lot of them, they shoot their game, they kill their game. Or hopefully they kill it and they take it home. And, I don't know how many out there are butchering their own game, but there's an element of when you kill those things, you know what you have. Like,
for sure.
And I think that there's a lot of people that take pride in that.
Absolutely.
Like, and I can't tell you how many guys I come across that are like, well, I won't go to such and such processor because that ain't your deer that you're getting.
Yeah.
And so guys like to know what they're getting.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think there's elements of that you know exactly what you're getting because you raised it
Mhm.
in your front yard.
Yes.
And I don't know. I just think there's value.
Well, I thought of this. It's been a while back. I was listening to somebody talk about something kind of like this. And I had a thought. I was like, we never really dive into why this is. And it's this thing. It kind of goes with what you're saying. It's like, you can butcher your own cow. You can raise your cow or even go buy him as a 200 or 300 pound calf and fatten him off, and then butcher him. But basically you didn't raise it, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was on your lot. You watched over him. You knew what was going into him. You know what he was drinking, all that stuff. Then you butcher him and then you eat him and you're like, does not compare to anything that you get from Walmart or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Same way with a
fork.
hog. You raise that hog, you fatten him up, you butcher him. You're like, that's the best bacon. That's the best ham. That's the best pork chop I've ever ate. Now
Cracklings,
listen,
man.
I thought about that. We always say that because you can go to Walmart or even to a nicer butcher shop and you're like, it's not as good. That hamburger is not as good as my hamburger. And we always say that. But then I got thinking, well, people, how come?
Think it's fresh.
Answer
man.
that. I was like, we
I would
talk
say-
about it all the time, but they're both cows. They're both pigs. How come? It has to be something
I would say it
different
has to do
goes on.
with antibiotics. I would think.
Yeah,
That's a
that's
big
what I'm
deal.
saying. So that's what I was like, does it mean what's being pumped into them chemical wise and feed wise?
Now you can't hold me to this, but I hear some guys talk sometimes. I used to do a lot of feed hauling and I would go to these lots and stuff. And so there's all these loopholes and regulations to be, grass fed beef.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of
They pull them off of this feed and these hormones and they'll put them out to pasture. This thing may have lived its first year and a half of its life, just getting pounded protein.
He goes out there and grabs a wad of grass.
Yes.
Eats it, grass fed.
For 30 days
Yes.
or 40 days
Yes.
or whatever. There's this bare minimum. And I'm telling you, man, when day 45 comes up, there is a truck that's backed up to the chute
Absolutely.
and they're like gone. And the next batch goes in. And that's how.
So they've only had a few days on grass.
Enough to put the label on it to sell it, man.
That's when it comes down to knowing your farmer.
Yes.
So like we buy a cow or a half a cow every year from a lady in Kentucky. And this is a lady we know. Like we trust her. Like I know she's not yanking my leg when it comes to what she's putting into this cow. She says there's no hormones. So that cow was birthed on her farm. There's no hormones. There's no steroids. There's no antibiotics ever given, no dewormers ever given to these cattle. And people think like, there's no way you can raise an animal without, these conventional things. Well, I've done it. I do it with pigs.
Yeah.
You can do it with cattle. You can do it with sheep. I've got sheep that they've never seen commercial feed. They've never had an antibiotic. They've never had nothing, never been dewormed, and they are as healthy as they come. So there are ways to do this and to raise them in these settings that's unconventional. So, but it's knowing how to do that. And that's what we've tried to do is learn some of these unconventional methods and model after, the Greg Judys, the Joel Salatons, the Justin Rhodes of the world. Like we've tried to take that model that they have and apply it to ourselves.
But you see how quick we know you don't answer that one question? How do we answer that question?
why it tastes
was it better?
Why it tastes
How
better?
come? How come it does not near as good?
I would say
Is it the processing?
Yes.
Could be some of the processing, because
Maybe.
they're slaughtering hundreds a day and pushing that meat through the line.
I think it's with how they're growing them. I mean, they're just,
Or is it just a mixture of all of it? The processing, all the hormones that are going into it. They're growing that animal.
they're growing it to size.
They're growing him a quarter of the time that maybe you would grow.
I think that I think that comes down to how the animal is raised more so than the butcher themselves. Because
I
I
think
think
It's the
it's
same
love.
way with your garden stuff.
That's what
though.
I think.
I think
What is
most
it? I
butchers.
I think it's love.
Love.
Yeah.
So much
When
love.
it's at my home, it's taken care of. and
Absolutely.
So much love went into
Coddled.
that grinder.
loved. Yeah.
Well, but there's
You speak over it. For
That's
real,
right.
man.
Yeah.
Look at you, you beautiful chicken.
You're so delicious.
You're
Just
gonna
speak
taste.
over 'em, man.
You're gonna be tender. You're so tender.
Well, like
I do
plants,
think
man.
though there's something to be said though
There
of,
is. There
of
is.
ethically raising an animal. I think
Yeah,
that when
sure.
whenever animals get stressed, they release
Yes.
hormones into their
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
And so,
So do
when they're-
we.
we absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of I don't know, I'm not going to say research because I don't know if it's been researched, but there's a lot of people that say that affects the flavor of the animal. Like I would advertise if I was selling chickens that my chickens have one bad day. Like they have one bad day, that's the day that their life ends, and that's the end of it.
We love our
it's
chickens.
quick. It's a quick death.
Yeah.
We do it humanely. We do it ethically. Same with our pigs. Like my pigs, they get so Joel Salatin wrote a book called like The Pigness of Pigs, and my pigs get to express their God-given pigness in the way that God created them to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Like they get to roam the woods. They get to pick up acorns off the ground. They get to dig for grubs.
Cool.
They get to do all of that, and they're never on one paddock for more than a set period of time, and usually that's just 3 or 4 or 5 days. So they're not having to sleep in their own manure. That fertilizer is getting moved around my property, so my property is getting healthier.
Yeah.
My soil is getting healthier. The healthy soil is what creates healthy food. So that nutrient, if we want nutrient dense food, like
Sure.
for healthy bodies, we've got it for healthy bodies. We got to eat nutrient dense
You
food.
want
And
it
that
in your
starts with the
animals.
soil health. Yes. So it's this big. If you're familiar with the term permaculture, it's the permaculture design of one system supports another system.
Mhm.
So I'm looking up just to see. There's so much in regards to requirements
Mhm.
by government
Yeah.
and cage free. If you hear the term cage free, what does that mean?
What
What does
what
that
people
mean?
think that it means is they are free ranging, they're frolicking in the pastures,
Yeah.
that they're never seeing a cage, but that is not the case.
It's a big
No,
smile
it-
on their
it means-
face.
Yeah.
It means they're in a building.
Yeah.
Like they're
Crammed.
They're
So
not
say that again. I guess
Shoulder
I'm
to shoulder.
so cage free.
cage
chickens
chickens.
are chickens that
Right.
aren't in a cage this
Right.
big.
Right.
Instead, they're in a building
They're in a room
Yeah.
like this.
It's an
Yeah.
enclosure.
Say.
It's
Yeah.
an enclosure.
Yeah.
and they're just
Yeah.
crammed.
Which
You
is
know,
They never see
if
sunlight.
you've ever been in that environment,
I've seen it.
I've seen it too. And you have to walk through them and
Mhm.
part the Red Sea, so to speak, to find all the dead ones in the bottom every morning.
Well-
I pulled the litter out of those big.
So
egg
do you know
factories.
why they had to begin giving chickens like antibiotics and stuff like that?
Yeah, they wouldn't get sick.
So
Because they're living in their own
Yeah.
filth.
Oh,
probably.
so Joel Salatin, he put this in that book. So I know I'm referencing him a lot, but he's been a mentor, I guess you could say, just through his work that he's put out. So I'm not going to name names, but the major chicken brands out there, they found, it was back in like the 1990s, I believe, is when this study came out. They found that these chickens were living in these CAFOs, these
Mhm.
what's it called, confinement animal feeding operations, I
Yeah.
think is what CAFO stands for. So these animals were in these buildings, confined. They've never seen sunlight, and what do? They eat and poop. They eat,
Yeah.
poop, and
Oh,
sleep,
yeah.
and drink water. So they're eating, pooping, and sleeping, and then this
and eating their own feces.
well, so the feces would actually fall through the cage. So
Oh,
they
okay.
weren't necessarily eating their feces.
They're eating their own. They're eating their own.
They can eat their own sometimes,
Yeah.
but what they were finding is that this fecal, they call it fecal particulate, like
Powder.
it's powdery and it gets in the air.
I have a name
These-
for that.
Yeah, so
Poop powder.
poop powder, poop dust. So what they found was that these
Oh,
chickens were
man.
breathing this fecal particulate in, and what it was doing, it was cutting grooves in their nasal passageway, and it was getting into their bloodstream.
Hmm.
So it was making them sick. So you've got chickens that now have poop in their body.
That's
And
not
And
good.
so,
Not
yeah, and
good.
it's getting, I mean, the blood feeds the muscles, so the muscles now have poop in them. So what they did was then they were like, oh, we can't be feeding people poop.
Dirty
Black
bird.
So-
bone chicken.
That's
Dirty.
it.
It's
That's
a-
it.
That's the old
it.
dirty bird there,
So
man.
they start
That's
giving
poop
them
powdered
antibiotics.
chicken.
Yeah.
Sounds like a recipe, a
yeah.
casserole.
Gosh, man.
Man.
Poop powdered chicken.
So they start giving these chickens these
bad.
antibiotics, and then all of a sudden they're feeding people dead poop is essentially what they are getting. So now they've moved away from that to now it's they will give them certain vaccines or even a type of hormone to essentially, because people want to be able to read on the label, they want to be able to read antibiotic free.
Yeah.
So they get around that by giving them these vaccinations, because you never see vaccine free on any kind of chicken. They start giving that to them in order to combat that before it ever even happens.
I can tell you how severe that stuff is that I used to go into these facilities,
Yeah.
not name them, but
Yeah.
large egg producers, massive ones. And they had a protocol. You would come in your truck and they would stop you and they would spray down
Everything.
your wheels
Mhm.
because that's what was coming in.
Oh,
right?
just the wheels. Okay.
They would stop. We would spray me down our wheels. They had one guy out there. I mean, man, I'm going to be honest. It was some guy out there with a pump up sprayer who was like, yep, that's good. And then you'd go in, and then when you leave, they'd really get it good. And I mean, that
And what was the cause?
just to try to curb the spread of disease.
Mhm.
Wow.
Like the bird flu, SARS. I mean,
Yeah.
man,
You
it's
think about
real.
it in a prison.
Coccidiosis.
I'm
Yeah.
telling you, man.
So check
it's
this
a real
out.
thing.
Is that
Check-
a real thing? Coccidiosis?
Yes, it
that
is.
a
Yeah.
real thing.
I thought I made that up.
Thought I got a good one there.
No, it's a real thing.
So check this out. Free range. Do you know what free range is?
Mhm.
Sounds awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not.
Free range. Continuous access to outdoor space. Access only through a pop hole
They can see it.
so they can see outdoors.
Yeah.
They
And the space outdoors is minimal. It's like they'll take a building and half that amount or so whatever the size of the building is half that amount has to be like outdoor. So you've got this giant building, and then whatever the size of that building is, half that amount of square footage is outside as well.
Well, it goes on to say this. They need to be outdoors for more than 51% of the animal's life. However, there's no guarantee that the bird will actually use the outdoor space.
Exactly.
So it's available
Kind of.
through as long as they,
They can see it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Man,
Talk about a loophole.
Yep.
golly. I know some people
Like, it's
that
there.
could be free if they.
No doubt.
Golly, man.
Get outside.
Well, I guess I need to go get some chickens.
It's wild what goes into our food.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
I just grew up with them all my life and messing with some. I mean, my thing is I could go back whenever I want because I know how to be around them.
Yeah.
I know how to handle them. So,
So, is there really any difference in the cage-free eggs, the range or free range? Like, what constitutes an organic egg?
They're fed organic feed, which theoretically
be
is
a
better.
positive.
it's
Yes.
better, but
Yes.
it doesn't mean that it's great
No,
It doesn't
no.
mean that the animal was treated properly.
so just like
either.
a pig, like
or
we
taken
want,
care of.
Yeah,
we
right.
want chickens to be able to express their chickenness.
Yeah.
Chickens, I have free range chickens. So like my chickens will wander, and they will wander far. Recently, I put them in an electrical netting system because I'm using them for a specific purpose at the moment, and I want them huddled in one area. But that netting gets moved daily or every other day. So it's not,
Yeah,
they're
so
never,
they're on new ground.
they are consistently. So
Because people don't realize what chickens can do to what say 15 chickens can do to a 100-foot circle.
they
Well,
can demolish
They'll
it.
decimate
Mud
it.
pit.
You got to move
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're basically like a pig in that regard.
Man,
Nearly.
they
They'll
will
scratch
peck,
everything.
Scratch
Yeah.
everything. There won't be a bug.
Mhm.
Spiders, man,
Yeah,
they hammer them,
tick,
don't they?
And they're
they do.
omnivores, so they eat the grass as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they love. I mean, we had 4-H chickens, and we had them in pens and stuff like that, trying to protect them from predators all the time. So you very
Mhm.
seldom let them free range because a fox would slip
Mhm.
up there in the broad daylight and snatch one. But we all the time about
Get
once
you
a
a guard
day.
dog.
Yeah,
I've
But-
got a guard dog and I still have chickens leave.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
know.
everything loves chicken, but we would every day go out there and pull clover. They love that.
Oh yeah.
that Ladina clover that grows wild in your yard. I'd have patches it in the yard, I'd just pull handful after handful and throw in there, and you could tell they went nuts. And then I would walk circles around because crickets would build up but they wouldn't go in.
No.
So
They knew better.
I'd walk circles and shoo the crickets
Inside
into the
little
and
treats there.
all the chickens come out when they knew. It was like a daily routine. They knew I'd walk out there and they all got lined up because they know here come the crickets.
Yep.
And I'd kick around the pen and the crickets would. I'd
Oh,
shoot
yeah.
them, they'd
That's
jump
awesome.
into.
That's awesome.
And I mean,
That's why yours taste better.
yeah, could have been
The old
They were eating
cricket love.
crickets, crickets and clover.
That is
and
love
then,
right there.
Then chicken feed. I was feeding them, chicken feed, but
Yeah. So let me ask you this:
Mhm.
monetarily, what's that look like for you?
Yeah. So we wanted part of this. We also partly did this for financial reasons.
Sure.
We wanted my wife to be a stay-at-home mom, which she is now. So I think that people jump into this with the thought that it's going to be super expensive. And it can be. If you want to buy, 12 chickens, you go out, you get your 12 chickens, and then you build $1,000 coop, and then you buy, another $500, feed setup, water setup, and you get all these things for them. Yeah, it's going to be pricey.
Let me ask you this before you get too far into that. Do you what's the government standard on a farm?
What do you mean?
What constitutes a farm in regards to tax reasons? Do
So,
you
like,
have
we
to
have
40 acres
So I think there are some tax write-offs that you can do with 40 acres,
that
but
you can't with?
that you can't with it. So we don't have quite 40 acres.
Okay.
So and our property is actually split between two separate properties that are about 1.5 miles from each other.
Okay.
So we have like our smaller 7-8 acre plot where our house is, and then right down the road we've got 31-ish acres. That's mostly woodland, but there is some grazing spots in there. Like we have an LLC, so we can write off certain things with that.
Yeah.
But as far as like,
So you found your way around it then?
yeah, absolutely.
So like what we do is, because we have 40 acres,
Mhm.
we write, off all our feed. We
Mhm.
write off all those
Sure.
things because we constitute a farm now.
Yep.
So,
I don't think that it's hard to classify yourself as a farm.
okay.
I think that so if the government came in and said, prove to me that you're a farm, I'd be like, okay, I've sold this many pigs. I've sold this many sheep. We've sold some layers, we've sold eggs, and I have receipts to prove these things. Like
yeah.
I built fencing for livestock, so I have receipts to prove all that. Like I think they're never going to question whether or not I'm a farm.
I guess that's weird to me that 40 acres constitutes a farm in the government's eyes,
Yeah.
but you don't have to have that to be
No,
a
because
farm.
you can grow a crazy amount of produce on 5 acres.
Oh my god.
Insane amount.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's
People
like
don't
even
realize,
commercial size.
they get the stigmatism of corn and bean fields
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
that it's, there's 40 acres of corn.
Yeah.
And if I was wanting to go into a decent little business of produce, you don't need 40 acres.
You could raise all of your food. So what we actually use on where our house sits, as far as like usable acres of what's feeding us, I bet I'm not going to give you an exact number, but I bet somewhere between 2 to 3 acres.
Yeah.
And that's for,
can you imagine if you had 5 acres of tomatoes?
Oh my gosh.
it'd be insane.
Yeah,
You just have
You'd
a
have
pile
to have
of rotting
Eblin.
tomatoes.
You'd have to have Eblin
trucking them off.
You'd have to
Yeah.
have Eblin Trucking Company come trucking them out.
Yeah, up to the old ketchup factory up there in Kokomo, Indiana, man.
Yeah.
Shout out out there if anybody needs any tomatoes hauled. I'm your man.
I would imagine though that because we're not very efficient with our land usage, like we have things spread out quite a bit.
Well, it
Yeah.
sounds like they're
If-
pretty efficient if you've got that much on 3 acres.
Well, we have access to more than that, but there's people that I'll watch on YouTube and stuff that they've got an acre and a half, and they're raising all of their own food. So you can raise. So there's a guy that I did watch on YouTube, and this is 100% true. I'll speak to this. So just chicken alone, you can raise 100 chickens if you use like the mobile chicken tractor style, which that's what we use. That's how we raise our meat birds. If you use that 1/10 of an acre, you can grow 100 chickens out. And at 5 pounds a piece butchered, that's 500 pounds of meat. That's all the chicken you're going to ever want to eat for an entire year.
For
on
a year.
1/10 of an
easy.
acre.
Yeah. And your friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You throw a vegetable garden. You think what a 2,000 square foot garden, if you're efficient with that, what it can produce.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Insane amounts.
That's why anybody that's got a garden that's like a quarter acre.
Yeah.
They're like begging.
I couldn't even.
They're always
I couldn't
begging
imagine.
people, come get tomatoes, come get cucumbers, because it's just it just outproduces
Yeah.
what you can, almost outproduces what you can put up.
Oh man,
You
I have 5 pads and mine are all spread out because I just like the aesthetics of it.
Absolutely.
Too.
Most
like
people
things
do.
spread out.
Yeah.
And I do lots of fabric, man. I have irrigation systems, and I mean, I'm all in. I create a lot of work for my children.
Yeah.
They are like
absolutely.
And I figured out some ways to do some things too, man. Varieties.
So there was a individual that I was reading an article, and they were talking about how it's like 90% of the United States grows less than 10% of the food, all the food that they consume in an entire year on their property. And so we currently sit at what we produce strictly from our farm. We're sitting in between 40 and 50% of when it comes to all the produce, between what we can, what we preserve. I mean, we're never going to be able to procure things like salt. Like, there's no salt mine around here.
Sure.
So we have to bring in some of those. Like, we don't have a milk house, so we bring in a lot of our dairy. Wheat, we don't grow our own wheat. So like a lot of those bread products, which are staples, I mean, pastas, things like that, those are staples in our house, and we have to bring those in. But like potatoes, we eat a ton of potatoes. And last year we grew probably 300 plus pounds of potatoes last year. I mean,
what's the best way to grow potatoes?
Do
you grow them in a bucket?
There's a bunch of ways.
So
to
we
do it now.
we did a few different things last year. So we actually did my favorite
with dirt.
My favorite was in the straw bales. So
Yeah.
straw bales were super easy to grow, but our goal has been we want as little input as possible. So most of our garden, we don't even fertilize. We don't till anymore. We don't, like, when we plant tomatoes, like I can bill. We do what's called the back to Eden style gardening.
So that's what I was going to ask you. Are you mulch or are you tiller?
So we started out 3 years ago. We borrowed a tractor and we tilled our entire garden space. And then we put like 24 inches of wood chips down over the top of it. And it's about 1,200 square foot, 1,200 to 1,500 square foot. We put down so many wood chips and let that just decompose. That first year, we did not get a great crop just because of all the
acidic.
It was the wood chips just rob a lot of that nitrogen.
Yeah.
But as you get worms coming up through there, eating all that down, digesting it, now like our soil, it's not dirt, like it's soil, and it is so rich. And each year we put like 6 to 8 inches back on top over the winter, and we can just dig with our hand down in there. So planting potatoes in that, it's so easy to get them out of there.
So for somebody watching, throw out what you were just talking about, where you got that information from.
Back to Eden. There is a film called Back to Eden, and it's Paul Gauci is the individual who kind of came up with this idea. And Paul's story is he was in a very arid climate in California. He's a Christian man, and Paul said that and I'll probably butcher the story a little bit, but the gist of it is Paul was sitting there asking God. He said, "Hey, how do I garden here? Like, everything's just dying." And God's like, "Go to the woods." Paul's like,
good place to go.
He's like, "What am I doing in the woods?" So he goes to the woods. Nothing. God, what are you saying? Crickets. And so he leaves. He's mad. He's mad at God. He comes back and he comes back to his house and he's like, "What do I do, God?" And God's like, "Go to the woods." "God, I just came from the woods." And so he goes back to the woods, and he said God told him something along the lines of dig into the ground. And he was able to dig down in the dirt, and it was rich. Like he could just scoop it up with his hand. And it was because all this litter, all the leaves, they just fell. They weren't tilled in. The leaves fell. They got processed by the bugs. They turned into soil. And so he said that at that point, he took the idea of wood chips back, and he covered he's got probably acres that are covered in wood chips, and he gets semi loads full of wood chips at this point. And every time that he goes out and plants these vegetables, he just simply uses his hand. He digs a hole, and he's got this rich, dark, loamy soil. And he doesn't use fertilizer. I mean, it's just incredible what this guy does.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And he's got some of the most beautiful fruit trees I've ever
Oh,
seen.
Really?
Gorgeous.
The way that he prunes them, man, they're awesome.
Yeah.
looking.
Yeah.
I'm learning.
You need to check it out. Back to Eden.
Back to Eden, Paul Gauci.
Have you heard that? I've heard I don't know where I heard this, and it could be so far, may not be no truth in it, but I heard that the world would end if all the termites disappeared.
Oh, I'm sure it would.
Like
What's
the
going to
earth,
decompose everything?
the world would end because there's like thousands of different species of termites around the world, and they keep the system in check all the
breaking
time.
it down.
All the time, eating leaves and the wood that hits the ground, and then what they expel and the gas, just
fertile.
different thing. They're like, if
Yeah.
every termite tomorrow disappeared off the planet Earth would.
There'd be a lot of wood laying around.
Yeah, I mean, wood's just carbon. At the end of it, wood's
Yeah.
carbon and like minerals.
Yeah.
And those termites are able. What else eats wood?
Sure.
I mean, nothing else.
Yeah, so I mean that's what's going on out
Yeah.
there. In the
Woodchucks.
Yeah, woodchucks. Hey, man.
woods. Beavers.
How much wood can a
Oh,
woodchuck
man.
chuck? If a woodchuck could chuck wood.
But just a funny little thought. But
Yeah.
it all lends to what you're saying. That stuff lays there. All them little organisms eat on it,
Well, we've all
and they
been
turn
out
it
there.
into fertilizer, nitrogen.
Soil's supposed to be alive.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
all
if you go out into, and I'm not slamming conventional farming at all, but if you go out in just a conventionally farmed monocrop field and dig that up, you may have your big three, your nitrogen, your potassium, and what's the other one?
phosphate or
Yeah,
your
phosphorus.
your K.
phosphorus.
Yeah, so you're gonna have those in there, but as far as like your micronutrients, as far as your life, so your worms, your protozoa, your like that microbiology,
Your
it's
termites.
not there.
I would disagree to a degree that a lot of the no-till stuff. Listen, they do smoke it.
Yeah.
They do, but a lot of the deal with this vertical tillage and I'm not a farmer.
Yeah.
I just am around.
And I came from like a conventional farming family, so I'm not slamming none
I'm
of
in
this.
the middle of all this. I just hauled a load of fertilizer today.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
You know, and so a lot of this is the earthworms. It's what they're trying to use with a lot of this. They're using these worms instead of coming down and just rolling the ground over all the time. They're using this existing ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And then the roots find the worm, right? And it gives it
I've noticed that they don't do deep
hardly
tilling
anymore, man.
You're right. So, but that was a thing. Like when I say conventional farming, I'm talking about that conventional tillage.
Back in the day. Oh
So-
man, they
so, yeah,
ruined a lot of
they
ground
have
with the plow,
flipped it
man.
over.
They have
did.
realized that it's not good, so they're leaving those roots in the ground.
Yes.
And they're coming in with these no-till drills, and that's great. I'm not
Yeah.
by any means
There's a
slamming the.
farmer in my church that I talk to a lot, and he is, I mean, inevitably he feels like he gets kind of direction in his farming.
Mhm.
He
Sure.
prays about it, and he's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's been pushing for these new directions.
Steward of the land.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
But he talked about he's like done the math on like all this fall tillage, and we could upset some farmers here, and I'm sorry, but all this fall tillage, he's like, oh, they got to stop that.
Mhm.
They got to stop that. They don't realize. He figured. He told me one time he's a numbers guy, and he's like, a 1/16 of an inch across 40 acres washes away.
Yeah.
So if you took that 1/16 off, he had some crazy number of how many pounds of dirt that is.
Mhm.
He had
Tons.
figured it.
washed away.
and it's your topsoil.
Yeah,
It's
and
the
it's a
good
part.
stuff.
It's a
Yeah.
1/16 of your topsoil. He said, and always the best is right at the top.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
very tip top's always the best. So
And
you're-
why is that though? It's for the same reason that he's saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's the part that where something dies and goes
Yes.
back to the earth.
yeah.
Yep.
So
But anyway, so he's like, he pushes huge for exploring new routes with cover crops and stuff
Oh, yeah.
like that.
Trying to put it back.
Yeah.
And he's told me, he's like, I have taken ground, whether he bought the ground or now he's farming a section that somebody else farmed
Mhm.
for years and the lease run out or whatever. He's like, I've taken over ground that people's like, it's done.
Mhm.
It's been
played
overused, it's
out.
been
Yeah.
played out. And he's like, in a few years, I've taken it and it's making more than it ever made,
Yeah.
like bushel per acre. through-
There's a
and he's like, he's pushing to get totally away from having to use these chemical companies
Yeah.
with fertilizers and stuff. He's like, I think there's a way just with cover crops
Well,
to
some
do
of this
away with
residual
all
and
that
stuff,
stuff.
man, really is hard on
It's
that.
pretty interesting, to
Yeah.
talk to him about. He's pretty passionate about it, but it all lends to what the things that you're saying. But
there's a guy named Gabe Brown in North Dakota that I've read a lot of his stuff and listened to a ton of podcasts by this guy. So this guy, he farms around 7,000 acres and he's 100% no-till. And what he has done, it's really cool how he intermingles, because this is kind of the system that I'm trying to go for on my small little homestead, is he will take a plot of his acreage, and for so many years he does row crops intermingled in the cover crops. So he never tills. He always plants them into a cover crop of some sort. But then every so many years, and I want to say it's like every fourth year, he leaves it fallow, but he runs all of his livestock through there. So he'll run 1,000 head of cattle, or however many cattle it is, over that plot. So they dump, and then they take all that, they process it, they ferment it, which fermenting vegetables, fermenting, these different things, we're finding out the health benefits of that.
Fermenting anything is a good thing.
So you think about that, a cow's rumen is where the grass gets fermented and processed, and then that animal is just pooping it out, and a cow will poop out, 20, 30 pounds of manure a day. So if you mob graze this, and each area is getting, thousands of pounds of manure on a daily basis, and the next day they move it to a new spot, you have all this life that comes back.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, he leaves it barren over the wintertime, lets the microbes do their thing, and then he comes back and he will plant a commercial crop in there to make money. And I mean, it's a wonderful system.
So even in the Bible talks about leaving your field lay.
Yeah.
Talks
And
about
it's like every seventh year.
Every seventh
letting
year.
it go
Absolutely.
fallow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's a God principle,
It
really.
is.
Yeah.
So, you
And I've
speaking
heard
on
he's a genius.
fermentation. That's right.
He knows.
God's pretty wise.
I've heard he's a genius.
Speaking on fermentation, my own experience on it, with my chickens, this is my...
You ferment your feed?
I started fermenting my feed.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was a massive difference in this last year.
Yep.
So this is my third year of having chickens.
Mhm.
The first 2 years over winter, like, I really diminished in my eggs. And I came across a video on YouTube where they were fermenting their feed. So I thought, yeah, what the heck? Why not try it? So I started putting feed in buckets and putting it in a...
Are you 20 or a 48 or a 72-hour fermenter?
I am a 72.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I do it with
because
my pig feed too.
What happens in that 48 to 72 to me is a pretty big difference.
Oh, yeah.
So what you're telling me is the drunker you can get your chicken, the more eggs it lays.
Absolutely.
I was gonna say, for the guy over here, it's
Yeah.
like, man, I don't know what you're talking about.
It
What are
smells
you
like
talking
beer.
about?
It does. Yeah.
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 I can tell you this, that my chickens, I was down to I was getting a couple eggs a day off of my chickens in the wintertime.
In the cold months, yeah.
And then I started doing this, and dude, I was running almost a dozen eggs.
Yep.
Versus my first 2 years.
Yeah.
Why is that?
The nutrient
It's-
absorption.
yeah,
It's
but-
bioavailable.
So the body's working
Well,
efficiently.
and think of this: chickens have a gizzard,
Yeah.
and they've got to break that stuff down. Well, a lot of times you're feeding them hard grain in the winter months, and they
The
just
days
don't.
aren't as long. They're not spending as much time
They're
out on the
not,
ground.
so they don't
cold, they're
get what they
conserving.
need.
So I guess that it's almost like it pre-breaks it down
It
for 'em.
pre-breaks it down,
Pre-digests it,
and not
yeah.
only
Yeah.
that, but it also begins to let some enzymes grow and things that they need.
stuff that's good for 'em.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, it was a huge difference.
And
for
you're
me.
saying you do it with hogs as well,
Mhm.
pigs.
So
as well.
my hog feed. So again, whenever we first got hogs, so last year we raised 4 pigs.
probably a smelly process.
No,
Not too bad.
not too bad. I mean, I don't leave it in it. I leave it out in my greenhouse, so it gets some air circulation.
Yeah.
But they say, like, they will give a number if you just Google, how many pounds of feed does it take for to grow out one pig, and it's somewhere around like 900 pounds of feed per pig to get a 250 to 300 pound pig. So
I call pig crap on that
That seems like a lot. But it
because
does.
it's not enough, in my opinion.
Really?
So that's the number that I think that Google gives, just
Yeah.
generically. So per pig last year when we averaged ours out. So we fermented. We did a 72-hour ferment on every bit of our pig
So you
feed.
ran less?
Oh, we ran like 600 pounds per pig.
Wow.
When you start doing the math on that over the course of a number of pigs, so like now you get into the practicality if you had 20 pigs, like you're gonna have some 55-gallon barrels that you're ferment. Like it's just it gets hard. You'd have to have a tractor to move it. Like I could do all this.
Tough.
Yes,
Yeah.
I could do all this in a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah.
So so money wise, like those are the things. Like I hear about this and people are like, there's no way. Like I can go into like what people told me how to raise pigs, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. I've seen other people do this. When it came to my fencing system, I raised my pigs on 1 strand of hot wire. You would be amazed how many people.
Yeah, we had 100 head
on a single strand.
On a single strand.
Yeah.
Huh.
People kept telling me they're like there's no way you can do that. I'm like, we did too.
Now every once in a while we had
I mean,
every once in a while we had 100 head of hogs scattered across a couple miles. But I mean, for the most part it worked.
Yeah.
Maybe
really hot. Dude.
Maybe some places he'd run like 2 close together, but my memory serves me right. Most of it was a single strand.
Huh.
Because one time we was going to market and we had them all had 30 or 40 feeder pigs all loaded up, and there's always those 2 or 3 or one that just will not. You finally got them in there, and Dad's like, shut the door. And when he backed up and got into that one strand, and the gate was shoved in the ground, so the trailer was grounded good. And I went to grab it and shut the gate with that last hog in there, and it blasted me, and I couldn't get it shut. And Dad finally just manned up and took it.
Gosh. But yeah, the fermenting that cut down a huge amount on our costs.
What does that mean? What are you putting in your feed to ferment it? You just put
water.
Just put water in
it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Water
you take sourdough
and
so
let it set and sour a little bit.
We make sourdough as well, and sourdough is way
So
more
you're fermenting your chicken feed, you're fermenting your hog feed, and you're fermenting your feed.
We are. So
chickens are pretty loose and
When you make sourdough, though, to get a sourdough starter going, a real active one, it's just flour and water.
Yeah.
You don't need to go buy some fancy thing from the store that's $25. Like, get you a cup of flour and a cup of water and mix it together and let it sit for a few days, and then you start the feeding process of it. But we won't dive into that right now. But it's the same concept with fermenting your chicken feed. It's grains.
Yeah.
Flour is a grain too. So you put your grain in a bucket, or whatever your commercial pig feed, which is still grain. You put that in a bucket, cover it with water, and let it sit, and it will bubble.
It will.
I mean, just like chicken feed, it will. You can get in there, you stir it, and all these bubbles just shoot up, and you just get this. I mean, it smells like beer. It smells like fermented beer, or like a yeasty smell.
Yeah. I was at the ethanol plant today. I know the smell, man. I know.
Yeah.
It actually smells pleasant.
It does.
It has a pleasant smell.
Josh, you're a blast.
It's there today.
Let me ask you this: what's your long game? Do you think you'll do this?
So this is my retirement gig.
Is it?
So like I said, I'm a police officer. At 45 years old, I can retire from my department with a pension.
Okay.
Now, I can't draw that until I'm 52. So, if I'm in a sweet spot, and I'm in a pretty nice position right now, but if I stay in a slick spot, then I might ride that out till I'm 52. But if I'm in a position where my homestead is profitable, which our goal is to make it profitable, whether that's, social media, education, I'm leaning towards the education route.
So how do you think you can get it there on profit?
I do. I think that so many people right now are hungry for this kind of information that I think there's a niche for it.
Yeah.
So whenever I started the chickens, there was a guy, and I mean, we'll just say it's God. I was going to say it's luck, but it was probably God. This random individual from Facebook that I saw his Facebook page about him raising chickens, and he's like 2.5 hours away. And I just reached out to this guy. I'm like, hey, I know you don't know me, but if you ever get to where you're butchering chickens and you want to teach like a young man, like how to do this, like I want to come help you.
Wow.
And this guy he's down from Cadiz, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Down past Hopkinsville. So I drove way down to Cadiz. This guy's like, sure. He ends up being a pastor. I have no idea. He's a pastor. And
you nailed that.
He's just an awesome guy. His name's Mike. Like Mike is a stud. And he's like, yeah, come on over. And so I drive down there.
Pastor.
He was.
No, a few.
And so he just took me under his wing.
Dude, I'm sorry.
He just took me under his wing and was like, this is how we do this. And I'm like, I love it. And so, but I was at a place where, you know, if you had offered me, and we probably butchered for 4 or 5 hours, just jaw jacking and all that. So if you had offered me and told me like, hey, for $100, you can go spend 4 hours with someone and they'll teach you everything you know about butchering chickens, I'd have spent $100 in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah.
And I think people are getting to that point where they're starting to want to put their money where their mouth is, and they want to get hands on. They don't want to just get on YouTube and see something that's edited out and where YouTube takes things out because you can't show certain things.
There's a few people out there got a real shocker if they're ready to get hands on.
No doubt.
Yeah, but
It's time to wake up and smell the bloody chicken.
It's blood.
But I think that people are getting there. They want to know how to butcher a hog.
Yeah.
Like, how do I raise one hog for my family and get 185 to 200 pounds of meat out of a 300-pound pig? How do I process that? You know, and if it's a matter of,
man, how many people out there have never took the head off a chicken?
never.
They've never took the guts out of a
I never had
An
until I got
animal.
started.
Just
Just
an
a
animal.
mammal, a
Yeah.
big mammal.
I'm self-taught in this.
Whether it be a deer, a hog, or a beef, they're just, man. I get thinking about it, and I guess I take for granted that I grew up in that.
Yeah.
And I haven't been doing it the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Too much. I mean, I butcher a lot of deer, don't get me wrong. 'cause
But
I'm
you know
deer
how to
hunter.
if you had to.
But if I had to tomorrow, I can do
You
it.
can go out and do it.
I can go out and
Absolutely.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I butchered
It's a
chickens
skill
till
development.
I cried.
Yeah. I
So,
want, my goal isn't to feed everybody. I want to teach people how to do this. Like
Right.
that's my end goal with this is
Yeah.
I want to be a source of education
Yeah.
where if the zombies come, that people can come and say, hey, how do I process this animal? And I
Yeah.
can say, hey, come
You
on
know,
over.
I
Let me
watched
show you how.
I watched quite a disturbing video where the kid and the kid's bawling and crying, and the dad and the kid are cussing a deer hunter. And you can tell
I've seen the
it's-
same one
Yeah.
in the truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just
it's awful.
bawling and cussing him and just, and he's like, why'd you kill it? And he's like, cause I eat them,
Yeah.
And then he asks the question, and it's kind of cliche that we do, but it's like, do you eat meat? They're like, yeah, they acknowledge we eat meat. And they're like, it's the same thing.
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And matter
You
of
know?
fact, what happened to that deer was way more pleasant
Way more.
than what happened to the pork or the beef.
Yes.
Up until
It's horrible what they do to these animals in these confinement operations.
You know?
Horrible.
And I'm not even knocking that. Praise the Lord that somebody's cutting up some pigs and,
there are-
feeding those people that don't understand where all that comes from.
and there are people out
You
there
know?
that are really trying their best because we're not out here. We're not trying to knock anybody.
No,
that's
I'm
doing
not
this.
here
There
to
are people that are.
destroy the slaughter
Yeah,
industry.
there-
I mean,
yeah.
slaughter them and feed people.
There are people.
Come
It's
on.
their passion, and they're doing it with the best of their ability. And so hats off to them. But we're looking for, honestly,
But it shows you the big disconnect.
Yes.
When you watch that video, the huge disconnect to be so upset that somebody, shot a nice big, 120-pound doe
Mhm.
and took her home, was going to eat her. And those people look at that like you're the awfulest person in the
Yeah.
world, but you're eating a cow that lived his life being pumped full of
crammed next
stuff.
to another cow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
being
you know.
pumped
Yeah.
full of stuff, and then went into a chute and they cut his throat and he bled out
Yep.
alive.
Live
Mhm.
stuff.
And I'm not even against that. Don't bother me because they're here for us to eat and to
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
take care of and all that stuff. But it's just the disconnect.
But I would much rather have something that was raised on my ground.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
And someone
you're also
needs to
putting-
answer the question why it tastes better.
But love.
Love.
I've already answered it.
Yeah, what you're
Yeah.
putting into it. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
that's
right.
right.
It's a healthy alternative.
Yeah.
So, pitfalls.
Mhm.
What have you run into that you feel like if I was going to tell someone that wanted to be a homesteader or wanted to start doing what I'm doing, what would you tell them?
Just start. That probably sounds cliche, but just start. I mean, some of my best friends, whenever we were butchering some pigs one time, their comment is, at some point you just have to reach in there and start cutting around on it. And like once it's dead, you have to start cutting around on that thing to figure out where you need to go. Like you can get so much direction, but until you get your hands dirty and start doing it, Like you aren't going to exactly know how it's going to work for you. But as far as maybe more practical pitfalls, like when we started, we really went into it with the thought of this is going to cost us a ton of money. And there's so many ways that you can do this and not spend tons. Like our first chicken coop, I was using it. I still use it. I mean, it's more of a maybe rehab home if I get a sick chicken or something now. But I took 10-foot pieces of 2x4, cut some angles out, braced those corners, and I got 2 cattle panels and folded over the top, wrapped the thing in some chicken wire, and I threw 2 heavy-duty tarps over it. That was my chicken coop. I mean, that I was, 100, maybe $120 into that thing. If you're going to go build a $1,000 chicken coop or even buy a $500 chicken coop,
I've got more in my coop than that.
So you think about your price per egg. Like I wanted affordable eggs because egg prices, it was like $7 a dozen.
Yeah.
So your first egg that you're getting is, $1,200.
Yeah.
$1,200 egg right there. So you amortize that over a number of years. And that's what we've done with some of our infrastructure. But don't overthink it. Like the whole, it's going to cost me an arm and a leg. Start fermenting your feed. You're going to cut down on your feed bill by 30%.
30%, you think?
That's a big one.
It's a bunch.
It's significant.
It is.
It's very significant.
And are eggs good for us? Because we've been told for years they're not
Oh
good
my
for us.
gosh, cholesterol is phenomenal,
especially
for you.
freeze-dried ones.
I saw a doctor the other day. He's like, it is malarkey. Eat eggs. He's
Yes.
like, that is a baby chicken cocoon.
Yes.
That is good for you.
Absolutely.
That's how he said it.
Well, I mean, that yolk is literally feeding that thing for its life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So nutrient rich.
Yeah.
My gosh.
That's why a lot of people don't realize how come you can ship baby chickens, because a baby chicken, what is it? Is it 4 days? They don't have to eat or drink.
72 hours. Yeah. It survives off what was in that yolk.
Wow.
After they hatch, they don't, because the yolk is
They're
still
loaded.
in that little feller and he's living off that.
Yes.
That's why they're yellow.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Have you dove into the all black chickens? Aren't those interesting? The black cones and the black everything, black feet, black beak.
I've not dived into those, but so silkies are the same as far as like their skin tone. So everything on the inside of a silky chicken is black.
Huh.
And
like their innards are even black. Their organs
wild.
and meat are a little bit black.
You open their mouth black all the way down.
Man, that's so weird.
Their meat's black.
Alien bird. Alien chicken.
Yeah.
They're neat. My dad got into them, and they are fascinating. Sometimes they go, because you're so used to when you see a big beautiful rooster.
They're pretty.
That his comb's all red, blood red and all that stuff. And then these are just black. They look like they just walked right
black
out of,
eyes.
They look like
toes,
they walked right out of Lord of the Rings.
Are they like metallic black? Like they have
their
a sheen?
feathers have a sheen.
Yeah, their feathers
man.
do. Yeah, they're sharp.
Oh man.
Ominous. You walk up on a chicken in the night, the black chicken. Oh yeah, man. Chill down your spine.
On the topic of pitfalls, though, I'd say just one thing to be prepared for. Be prepared for animals to die, and that's just a reality of it.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have baby chicks die.
Yeah.
You're gonna have like I had some sheep that died.
It's just a part of a farm.
It is. It is. It's part of a farm. Be willing to be able to handle that.
My mom always said, long as it stays at the barn, she prayed it. When it comes on this farm death, it has to stay at the barn.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can tell you this. That was probably the most difficult thing when we moved out to our ground. For Stella, understanding that things are going to die.
Yeah. The circle.
It really was difficult for her. We lost a cat first, and that was like the end of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, and then it was a rabbit, and and the other day I went in and told Farkle died. Which one, Farkle? I mean,
She's good. She's good.
Yeah,
Sensitized.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Wait till you hand James over there the big rifle. And my dad's like, here's a 12 gauge slug and a 12 gauge. He said, I got to run to town. That one hog he needs put down. And I'm like, I'm 10 years old. I'm like,
I don't know about this.
okay. He said, make sure you hit him right between the eyes. Hit him good and clean. We don't want no suffering here. Make sure you put him down quick.
Take the fight out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just part of it's I take for granted, I guess.
Same.
It's a part of something that every kid needs to experience.
An awesome way to grow up.
Stella's finally understanding it.
Yeah.
And
It'll make them better because of it.
it will. Yeah.
Yeah.
I traumatize my daughters. one time with rabbits.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Putting a rabbit down though, it's
Well,
rabbits scream.
Yeah.
And-
And my dad got it.
oh,
My dad got
oh.
into rabbits, and we were going to butcher rabbits. And he's like, we're going to get rabbits. We're going to butcher so many for ourselves. You can sell. People love rabbit.
yeah.
They want rabbit. And then all them little white ones with the pink eyes, like the first phase of the rabbit butcher. My dad's like,
can't do
Can't
it.
do it.
I'm
Yeah.
out.
Yep.
He
Can't
said
do
the
it.
little pink
My dad's too
eyes.
soft,
I'm
yeah.
out. I'm
Easter
out. He
bunny.
said chickens,
Yeah.
butcher them all day long. Hogs, cows, they need to die, you know, because they're just
Oh,
itching
man.
to be ate. He said, but them rabbits, I can't. He's
Oh,
like,
they're so soft.
he's like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
He's like, he drew the line.
Yep.
I think we went through like one butchering phase of rabbits. And he's like,
Yeah.
all them little white heads over there, them pink eyes looking at you. He's like, I'm out.
I tried to
Can't do it.
I tried to feed my daughter her pet, and it was not good. She's
You don't tell them.
Haley, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
I would say that's one of the traumas of my childhood. I remember when I was a kid, we had snowball and snowflake.
Wes knows. He
Yeah.
knows, man.
I
It's
do.
bad.
We bought them not to raise them, but as pets.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I remember we were getting ready. Dad had got a new job, and we were moving away. And he's like, "Sonny, we're gonna eat these critters because
Yeah.
we're moving."
Yeah, we have to.
And I was like, I just remember being like, Snowball and Snowflake are dying.
We're not taking
Oh.
them with us, but we're going to take them with us.
I remember sobbing while we were eating those things. Like, this is awful.
Dude, it's all coming back
But-
to me, man. I feel bad. I know, man.
So
I know.
you know that experience well.
I hurt my
Yeah.
children. I
Yeah.
did. That's
But
scarred
I'll
my
tell
own
you
stomach.
what, there's elements of that things that are lost.
You got to
Yeah.
separate it on the animal rights thing. You got to separate the difference between humanity
Absolutely.
and animals.
Yes.
And you always, and farmers take care of animals better than maybe
Oh,
anybody on the
yes.
planet. Like my grandpa loved his cows. And
Yeah.
he would love on them cows. He had a herd of 100. You could tell he loved them. I mean, he took care of them. If they're sick, you're out there at
Mhm.
midnight, you know, doing stuff for them, trying to keep them alive, pumping mineral oil
Yeah.
down them to get the gas off, all those different
Yeah.
things. But then when the day came, he's like, "Yeah,
Time to die.
Oh,
you're
yeah.
going to the butcher."
Ground beef.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
He took 'em there,
because the
yeah.
next
Yeah.
round, yeah. So
I mean, I love my chickens.
yeah,
I got gold.
Oh, that's a cool name. That's
we got,
cool.
we got golden
Yeah.
eye from us. Yeah. See, my chickens turned into pets.
Yeah.
Like, my wife would not eat them.
I gave Gene this summer because Summer's getting ready to start raising some. And Gene, he was black with a white face. He was Gene Simmons.
That's cool.
We've
Did his
got
tongue hang
we've
out
got-
all the time?
we've got Ruby. I mean, we've got all.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We've not named any of our chickens.
We name them.
So yeah, we've never
Yeah,
named any of them, and we made it very clear to our kiddos. I've got 4 daughters, and I've made it very clear, like, these animals are they're for food. Like, that's what we are raising these animals for. Like, if you want to pet them and you want to play, like, that's fine. Just know that at the end, this is the end goal. And now, like, we can go out and butcher 100 chickens in a day. And, you know, the last time, you know, my 4-year-old's walking around with a chicken head, like, twirling around, like, hey, look, I can toy. And we were butchering pigs. They were playing with pig eyeballs. They're like, look at this right here. Here's the heart.
Little net.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, when it comes to the chickens,
Yeah.
how are you guys doing that process?
So we brood them. So we've got 100 birds that we just got just the other day. Now some of those went to some friends that wanted to. We brood them for 3 weeks. So we put them in this. I mean, and again, we want it to be inexpensive. So I took a sheet of plywood and I cut it into 4 pieces, and that's my brooder. Just put a piece of plywood over the top, put a little heat lamp in there, heat it. They've got some ventilation on the side. It's very cost effective. Like, it was cheap, but it works. I put some sawdust in the bottom of it. I get sawdust from my neighbor who's a woodworker. So before that, I got it from a guy in Mount Vernon that would just give me all of his things locally if you can.
Yeah.
So we brood them for 3 weeks. During that 3 weeks, they get free feed, as much feed as they possibly want during those 3 weeks they can have. They get fresh water every day. When they're bad, we put fresh bedding on top of it. It's kind of like the deep litter method.
Yep.
So we do that, and then we move them to pasture. So we raise them to 7 to 8 weeks old, probably closer to 8 weeks most of the time. So for the last 5 weeks of their life, they have full set access to grass, bugs, whatever they want inside of their chicken tractor. Every day that chicken tractor gets moved, and many times it gets moved twice a day, just so they continue to have fresh access to grass. There's all kinds of phytonutrients that they get from eating green grass that has been grown by water and sunlight from heaven. I mean, there's just a lot of just health benefits to them eating those kinds of things. Yes. So we do that for the next 5 weeks. Then we have a butchery day. It's a community event. Like we have multiple family members that come over, and they know during chicken butchering day, like we're gonna feed everybody.
That's the way ours
My
goes,
wife's gonna cook stuff for everybody. We're gonna have a good time. Like we
Have
horse
some
around.
chicken.
Bring your
Oh shit, man.
yeah, bring your
Oh,
kiddos over. Let the kids see the
Yes,
process,
yeah.
and let the kids get their hands dirty. If
Everybody
they come up there, if the kids come up there and they want to see the process, like any phase of it, whether it's the scalding, whether it's getting tossed into the chicken plucker, whether it's the evisceration, whether it's the killing at the very beginning, like any part the kid wants to do, I want them to be a part of that. I'm not going to force them to.
Right.
My kids, I'll probably push a little bit harder, but your kids, I'm not going to force them to do anything. But if they say, "Hey, can I cut the head off?" Sure, come here, let me show you how. Let me show you how to do this humanely, because there is a science to it. You
Do
don't
you
want to
guys
take the
hang
whole head off.
Do you hang them in cones?
We do. So we hang them in a cone. So turn them upside down. And so the theory is, and I'm no scientist, but they say that when you hold a chicken upside down long enough, the blood rushes to the head and they kind of go to sleep. It's kind of like when they get
Chills
like
them out,
anesthesia. Yeah. So hang them upside down and put them in what's called the killing cone, and cut their jugular. You can cut all the way through. They begin to asphyxiate. So, and then they start to they retain a lot of the blood. They release some of those stress hormones. Now, regardless, the chicken's not going to have a good time. And you cut my neck, I'm going to be upset. So the chickens will still flop around. But if you just cut the jugular on each side, then it gives them the opportunity to bleed out without asphyxiating, and they release more blood. They're not nearly as stressed. It's a
cleaner meat.
cleaner kill. So we let them hang for probably 3 to 5 minutes. We take them from there. We take them to the scalder. We've got an electric scalder. We can usually do 2 chickens at a time. We scald them. It's about 67 or 60 seconds at 148 degrees. So this thing you can really dial in. So now they say that's the sweet number. We've done it hotter, a little bit colder. It just, if you leave them in there too long, you'll begin to cook that bird.
Yeah.
So we scald them. We've got a chicken plucker that we toss them in. It literally looks like a washing machine with a bunch of little fingers. Spins around 30 seconds, and your chicken is as clean as a whistle.
Really?
I mean, it's amazing.
It's technology ahead of what I dealt with.
You pulled it by hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah. So, and then, I mean,
And there's an art to that too.
there is, yes.
Yeah.
Everyone, I think, if you're going to try this, do one by hand before you
Yeah.
ever do one with the machine, just so you can appreciate.
My dad was like, never let go of the feather.
Yeah.
You keep the feathers in your hand. You just keep going with the scalded feathers. You don't let go of them. Just they'll naturally come out, and those feathers work like
Almost like gloves.
Yeah,
Pull it
that-
down.
that work.
Interesting.
Working it
I've never
down.
heard that before.
Yeah, he's like, don't throw them feathers down. Keep them in your hands, because if you don't, you're picking at. You
Oh, you
find
gotta-
yourself
yeah,
picking
you're-
at
yeah.
feathers instead of doing this system. But
Sure.
so I mean, yeah, he was training us on how to pluck a bird,
Yeah.
But scold them, and then you singe them.
No, we don't singe them.
You don't
So we
singe 'em.
just we scald them.
singed 'em.
We toss them in the plucker, and that loosens those feathers real good. And the plucker really gets even the pin feathers out.
Yeah.
I mean, it does an amazing job. And then we have a big stainless steel table that's lined with people.
Well, we always singe them because they actually have little hairs on them.
They
like
do.
hair
You're
like
right.
stuff. Do you leave that, or does the plucker get that
The
as well?
plucker gets a lot
It
of that.
gets that. See, hand plucking, that's all still there. A lot of times those little hairs. So we singe those hairs gone, and then they went straight from there to get out.
Yep.
And
So
then
we cut
me
the
and my
feet and the head.
sister,
And
me and my sister cut we left the feet on them
Mhm.
as they were getting them
Okay.
entrails out. They had a table over there getting, your livers, your heart, your kidneys,
Oh, yeah.
out,
Keep
get
all that.
get the neck out of there.
Yeah.
And you left the foot on them because it was a good place to work the bird,
Mhm.
hang on to him. And then they slid them down there to me and my sister. And we cut the feet off. Cut the feet off. Dad was always adamant, get them in the eyes.
As quick as possible.
Yes.
Yes.
In the eyes, ASAP. Like that will be a better bird quicker it's in that eyes.
So we keep the heads, we keep the necks, we keep the feet, livers, hearts. I don't like gizzards, so many times the gizzards get boiled and then fed to the pigs, just as a protein source. But the feet, necks, and heads, we will take and we'll get a giant stock pot, and sometimes multiple batches built with water, boil that for a day, a full 24-hour boil, and we can all that broth and make some just killer bone broth.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah. Super nutrient rich. So like your chicken stock that you just buy at the store, like make your own.
Is that what they're doing? Is that how they do it?
Yeah.
Is it just
Yeah.
what's
It's a boiled carcass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how you get chicken broth.
And I love
Man,
watching
they should
people
just
make
change the
chicken
name
broth.
to boiled carcass.
Yeah. Head
I think
broth.
it's sell
Boiled
better.
carcass juice.
You think it'd sell
Yeah.
better? It's just
Yeah.
make sure you when you're at the store tonight, you get some boiled carcass juice. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh man.
probably wouldn't say.
But, as far as like no waste goes, so then what we do, so like the guts, we end up putting in, we'll dig a 4-foot hole down in a wood chip pile and leave that till the next year and just let it all just decay. And then after we get done with the heads and the feet and the necks getting boiled down, those bones they're like sponges, and you can just pinch it, and it's so soft.
Mhm.
That turns into dog food.
Right.
So we take that out, and we feed it to the dogs.
Yeah. That's good.
So
You're using it all.
absolutely.
The circle of life.
What did what's his name off Christmas Vacation? He's like, hey, save the neck for me.
Is that Cousin Eddie?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Clark.
Hey, Clark, save the neck for me.
Oh, man. That's funny. All right, guys, is there anything that
I don't know. It's been good.
Yeah,
It's
it
has
good.
been, yeah. Yeah.
For me, as much as anything, it took me from the age I can remember, 4 or 5, till all those years of that going through. Kind of
Yeah.
took me down memory lane.
Me
Oh,
too.
man. And learn some stuff, because we didn't go that deep. We didn't make our own carcass juice or nothing like that.
No, but you think about all the memories with your family.
Yeah.
sitting
Oh,
out
yeah.
there, man.
Yeah.
I mean, man, that's
Yeah.
that's
And that's a
Absolutely.
whole other element of it that people are missing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Those days when they come over to butcher chickens and all those people over there and you're eating, you remember those.
You do.
Remember
Kids
those.
running around playing in the
Yeah.
background. Yeah.
And there's always
yeah.
a meal, and it is the freshest.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
I mean,
Fresh
it's-
chicken.
That's right on.
Yeah.
Or hog or whatever.
Absolutely.
I remember hog cracklings.
Oh, man.
You're like,
Seasoned up.
you're
Oh.
there like standing by it, sneaking in there. And
Yes.
I remember all the ladies, they were like, get out of there.
Good.
Oh, yeah.
we make our own yogurt on the regular at the house? So
Same.
Yeah.
Weekly.
it's way better.
Significantly.
And it's so easy, dude. It's like
You do the Instant Pot thing?
we do.
Yeah, that's what we do. I mean, pour it and leave it.
Are you like incorporating your fruit from like into your yogurt?
I'm not
Oh,
yet.
you're getting there though. That's
I'm working towards all that.
man, that just
Yeah.
sounds good, don't it? That's like peach yogurt.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have peach trees or anything like that?
We do. So we've probably got 15 different fruit trees, but none of them are producing yet. So these were all planted within the best time to plant a tree was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
All these have been planted within the past year to 2 years.
Covered up.
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
Feed
Feed it to the pigs.
They look good this year, man. Mine bloomed out good.
Yeah.
My bees have been all over them.
Yeah.
Nice.
You have bees?
No, so some of this. So like I've got a family
Man, I
member
feel
that.
like we all
bees?
just need to hug and be like,
Yeah,
That's such a
"Kumbaya."
good story for you guys.
So-
Bees,
But do you have bees?
yeah,
You
do
got
have bees. Yeah.
My cousin's got like 15 hives,
Yeah.
and so I get all the honey that I could ever want. And so
Yeah.
if I can get all of them, then I'm not going to worry about bees
I
for
can,
myself.
I can overdo it on honey.
I don't
Oh,
have.
It's
don't
good
have,
for your trees.
I buy
Oh.
5 gallons at a time.
I don't have any hives. I have one.
I'm by myself.
And I seen
Sucking
some-
it out of
and
the bear.
a little
Oh,
plug
yeah.
here. I've seen some honey that's for sale here.
Yeah.
at
That's from
products.
Aaron Costin.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they raise a bunch. They raise quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my guy that I
West
get
gave
my
me
honey
some of
from,
his honey.
my guy started Aaron on his.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
That's
ate all
awesome.
the honey you give me. It's good.
It is good. It's good for you. Well,
It
honey
is.
never spoils, right? It's
It does
medicinal.
never.
I mean, that is the
I'm in
stuff,
this
man.
constant text. It's revolving like literally by the minute with Aaron and Brian.
Oh yeah.
all dealing with bees.
That's
Yep.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Man, listen,
We
I
ferment
got
like
a whole
onions
thing.
and
We
honey,
could do a
honey,
whole
garlic, and honey.
podcast
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah, we need
Yeah.
to bring a bee guy in and do a whole
Yeah.
podcast on bees.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Oh, man.
Because
Yeah.
bees are fascinating. When you get to someone that really knows,
Bees are like nature's
Pollinator,
evidence
man.
of God.
Yes.
It's real.
they've got some crazy stuff.
Listen,
going
I'm
on,
just going to
don't they?
throw this in here. God sent me my bees. Oh, my God, it's crazy. Maybe a little bit. And I talk to God. I do. He talks to me. I do more listening. I wish I probably would do better if I would do more listening than I do talking. But yeah, he sent me some bees. He sent it to me. I have them in a tree at my front door.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, and when they came, it was crazy. Yeah, I was outside tilling my garden. Here we go.
Most people get bees and they're like, we need to get
Call
rid of
somebody.
those.
Yeah,
not me.
yeah,
I'm
kill
saying,
them.
this is for
He's like,
real.
thank you, Jesus.
Yeah. I specifically asked the Lord for bees. I'm out in my garden. I have all these multiple pads. I'd love to show you.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. But I'm out there in February. This is how into it. I'm out there in February. Like, the soil's right. It's dry. I'm out there busting her up,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so it can weather and things can
Yeah.
break down. And I'm like, Lord, I need bees. I'm going to plant these flowers here, and I need. I had some pollination issues the year before.
Mhm.
I'm like, Lord, I need bees, and I'm gonna do what I can with my two hands and what you've given me. But I need you to send me bees.
Mhm.
I will set this up for the bees. And me and my wife are sitting outside. It's like whenever bees move. What is
Yeah.
it? April.
Yeah,
Something like
April
that,
to
yeah.
June.
Yeah. All of a sudden we're sitting outside and you can hear it. And it is like, the
humming.
the low drone buzz of 40,000 bees
Yeah.
across right in front of us. I'm not kidding you. They land on this tree right on my front yard. I look at my window every day and I
Yeah.
see this. Okay. And I was watching this morning. And
So they swarmed on your.
they swarmed on my.
Yeah.
There was this little bitty hole in this old tree, man, and they went in there. And I'm telling you, it was such. And I don't know if there's any truth to this, but this is the 6th or 7th year, and yeah, it is just a little kiss from God, man.
That's awesome.
So do you have bee boxes? still?
No, but I would like to have.
Oh, you need
But
to have
I-
bee boxes.
But I don't need bee
because-
boxes because the Lord's like,
no,
"Here's."
no. Listen, you do, because every year those bees will have a split.
I seen that last year.
Yeah.
they split
I
off.
seen that.
So what you can do is you can catch that split, and then you produce your bee box.
Yeah.
I watched a whole bunch of them, like a whole other hive.
Yeah, because they will
Yeah.
regularly, because every year they pretty much grow to the point where
Yeah,
they're
they can't live in
we
there
need to
together.
create two.
Yeah. I didn't see. There's a lot about this I don't know. I just know that, man, guys. I have this the little clover, the Ladania clover.
Yeah.
Right? I got bees. Okay, you can go outside, and you would not believe how my yard. I've been just a lot of work. I've been
Mhm.
clearing things off. So you have these dry patches. You have these barren patches, and you would not believe how quick the grass and the clover is taking it over, because these bees are just in this circle, just pollinating this stuff. On some cool to go my yard moving.
That's awesome.
You should have seen them, Jesse. If she was taking trees,
Yeah.
did not knock around, going, man.
Forever those
Yeah.
trees.
Well, and that's what in that text message that Aaron and Brian have the other day, Brian mentioned that 29 degrees. It needs to be at 29 degrees for so many hours before it can actually hurt your peach trees.
Knocks the blossom
Yeah.
off of it.
Yeah,
So you can move air too if you have fans.
yeah.
You can move some air.
Brian said one year he went and made 12 fires around
Yes,
his peach
to
trees.
circulate.
Oh, really?
I've heard, I've seen them. I've went past places where, like, one time we drove past the orchard, and I think it's peach trees. They said, I was like, what's going on out there? And they had fires just every so little, because there's frost supposed to be that night. They built fires. They said just the smoke, even when the fire goes
The
out,
circulation.
it's just enough
Mhm.
movement that'll cause the frost from setting on those.
Here's an
peach blooms.
interesting fact about peaches.
Really?
They
Just-
come in a can. No. Who do you think is the highest producer of peaches? What's the state? The peach state.
Obvious answer would be probably Georgia.
Everyone
Georgia is
guesses
the peach
Georgia,
state.
but the way you're going with this, it must be
Setting
Illinois
up
or
and
something
setting.
like that.
So we have Georgia. You think Georgia?
That's
We'd
my
be close.
guess would
We'd be
be,
very
yeah.
close neighbors. South Carolina.
Alaska.
Okay.
South Carolina.
Alaska.
I mean, there's the Georgia peach. We got that, but South Carolina.
If you see a booth alongside the road that says we're selling Alaska peaches, you need to keep them.
You do, buddy. Don't eat them. Do not partake in those peaches.
Well, you may never be seen again if you stop there. 'Cause
Come get in the
something
van
isn't right.
here. Come on.
Yep.
Oh, we got to wrap up. My phone just died.
That's good, guys. Oh, man. All right. So to wrap up, Zach.
Yeah.
Tell people where they can find you. Tell them about your YouTube channel. Real quick. And
Yeah. So on Facebook Acres, on Instagram, I believe it's just Oxford Acres on Instagram. The website, oxfordacres.org, and then YouTube, just Oxford Acres. There's a
Right.
picture of me looking at a pig. So,
Oxford Acres. Check out Zach.
yeah.
Does the pig look nervous?
It almost looks like the pig's smiling.
Oh,
It's pretty funny.
I didn't know if it was right before
Yeah.
this time.
Nervous, kind of nervous.
Last time you looked at Willie that way, we never saw him.
Yeah, this was one of my friendliest female pigs, and she was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a nice pig.
Awesome.
All right. So say it one more time. Oxford Acres.
Oxford Acres.
They can find you on Facebook,
YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, website.
What's your
All right.
website?
oxfordacres.org.
Do you raise
There you
any
go.
oxen?
I don't. No,
Man, you need a big old box. Big old ox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that'd be awesome.
Big old blue ox.
Yep.
Yeah. Oxford Acres.
All right.
Guys, we appreciate you watching. Man, we had a really good turnout this evening. A lot of people
Good.
wanted to hear what you had to say.
This
So,
Cool.
This was fun.
golly,
This was
gee.
It was fun.
I mean, it's pretty cool to see the people that you bring along
Yeah.
with you and the people that we bring along. So we appreciate everybody watching.
Yeah, thank you.
If you guys get a chance, tune in next week. Next week will be a good one too. We're excited about it.
All
So
right.
we'll catch you guys later. If you guys get a chance in the morning, tune in. It's Good Friday. So we'll be on here for Not Up for Discussion. We have every
Friday morning.
Friday
devotion
morning,
time.
we have a devotion. So if you guys get a chance to tune in, we'll be talking about the goodness of God and what He did.
Amen.
All right. We'll catch you guys later. This is Not Up for Her. This is Up for
This
Discussion.
is up.
That's right.
Tomorrow
Up for
morning will be
discussion.
not up.
Catch you guys later.